Hi, this is Wayne Zell, and welcome to Blueprint for Wealth, your very fast-paced video blog that is designed to help you realize your personal dreams of wealth and freedom, featuring educational topics and, most importantly, special guests who have a story to tell, particularly entrepreneurs. And today, my special guest is Ken Rusk. And Ken, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks, Wayne. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This is always an important discussion. I can't wait to have it.
We're going to get into some good stuff today. Ken is a best-selling author, and he's written a book. It's in the background behind him. What's the title of the book, Ken?
It's called Blue Collar Cash.
Blue Collar Cash. So we're going to talk about that. And he's an entrepreneur, and he's just done an ESOP, which we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about that. The thrust of what Ken stands for, at least from what I can tell, is that there's no degree, no college degree, no graduate degree that's required to achieve comfort or peace and freedom. And so, Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you started digging ditches at a very young age, but tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became an entrepreneur.
Well, my father was a Marine, and he had, between my mother and he, they had 5 boys under the age of 9, and we lived in a very small house in Amherst, Ohio. Wow. And so it was tough. You had to rule it with an iron fist kind of thing. And 5 boys with too much dopamine, it was insane. And but we had a blast. Okay. He tried to do all that on $14,000 a year as an assistant produce manager. So it was tough. And, we had shelter, we had basics we needed, we had clothing, we had food, we had all that kind of stuff. We had a little bit of, the ability to go out and do fun things. But if we wanted something beyond that, we had to go get it ourselves. So, it was always a risk reward relationship. Okay. If I wanted a new aluminum bat so I could play baseball, that was the hot thing back then, aluminum bats. I had to go find I think they were $30. I had to go find the $30 to buy that bat because he gave me a wooden one, but so it was one of those things where it was always a risk reward. So I had paper routes, and I had worked for bowling alleys and bakeries and whatever. But when I was 15, I started working as a ditch digger. My high school shared a fence with an industrial park. And we cut through a hole in the fence to go after school to go hang out at the carryout. But we had to go through this industrial park to get there. And there was always a lot of milling and, energy. People were milling about and, trucks and equipment and, grown up Tonka toys and that kind of thing. And I just checked in one day. I knew someone that worked, and I said, "What do you guys do?" They said, "Well, we dig ditches." I said, "Well, I can do that. I'm qualified for that job." So sure. I wanted money for my first used car, take my girlfriend out for pizza, go bowling with my buddies, whatever. And so I did that for 3 years, and I learned the back of the house and the front of the house. I dug ditches in the summertime, and I worked in the office in the wintertime after school. And I just kind of learned and observed how the business ran. So when it was time to go to college, it was like, you can either keep working here or go to school. I had to make a decision. They had me opening up franchises from scratch around the Midwest when I was 18. Wow. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to try that. So I literally went Chicago, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we opened up these franchises literally from scratch and building the buildings out and everything. So that to me was as much of college as college could have been, the training that I got there. And it led me to just continue the path down. If I wanted something, I need to go get it. So I lived out of a suitcase for 3 years working for them at the end of that relationship. And then I went and I moved to Toledo, Ohio in 86, opened my own company with 6 people. And I think we were just talking, I think I have nearly 220 today. So it's been quite a ride.
That's a tremendous growth and a great success story. I think we have a lot in common. My first job, I was a dishwasher at the age of 15, and then I became a ditch digger underneath a house that had collapsed. And so we were digging out this house, me and another guy, for an entire summer. It was just the two of us using shovels, not equipment, because the builder was too cheap to hire somebody to do that. Sure. And you learn a lot of things, carrying bricks, digging ditches, whatever it is that you're doing as manual labor. I learned that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life, but
Yeah.
and I went to college as a result of that. But I think college is not for everybody today, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's a wholly inefficient system in its current state. Back in the day, when I was in ninth grade, I remember I was in econ class and the teacher said, how many of you are going to college? And only about half of us raised our hand. And that seemed pretty balanced because 167 people working in the U.S. today, 167 million people working in the U.S. today considered full employment. Only, half of them, about half of them, 77 million, Wayne, do something with their hands. So those jobs are still viable today. Now, am I anti-college? No. I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, if you're going to be an architect, a teacher, banker, whatever, if you're going to come at me and as a surgeon and, want to cut my shoulder open so I can get back on the golf course, I want you to know everything there is to know about a knife before you come at me with it. I get that. But so many college degrees today are these liberal arts and things you can't use, and they're getting talked into borrowing all this money. And the stats are insane. I mean, 40% of kids go to college today not knowing why they're going because they're just told they have to. 25% of those people change their mind on their degree in the first year or two. So there's a waste of a year. And then only 33% ever use their degree ever in their lifetime. So if you're not going for a very specific reason, there's a whole lot of better ways to approach life out there.
I put 3 kids through college, and 2 of them didn't really know what they were going to do. They had degrees that they're not applying in their lives, just exactly the same as you. And then one of them, went into math, and now he's going into business as a result of his math degree. But it really depends on the individual. But if you go in without a plan, you're going to come out without a plan unless you can develop that plan on your way. And it really requires good advice, good coaching from the parents. And, but I was raised in a different environment, maybe like yours, but, my father wasn't a Marine, but he acted like one. And it was basically, you're going to study this when you go to college if you want me to pay for it. And he didn't pay for all of it. I paid for half of it. And after you get out of college, you're going to do this. So accounting and then law. In hindsight, it was the best advice I could have gotten because it equipped me with professional degrees. But again, not everybody's built for it. I have 4 kids. My youngest didn't go to college. He's making as much money as his older 3 siblings.
I hear that a lot.
He likes, doing what he likes. And it's not necessarily blue collar. Now, blue collar jobs are at a premium today because it's hard to find people to do these skilled jobs like plumbing, electricians, masonry, things like that. And what's your take on that? Where's the economy going if we don't have people to service these very important needs?
Well, I look at it this way. By the time you put your feet on the floor in the morning to the time you get to church or school or your office, wherever you're going, you're going to cross 10,000 jobs that are still viable today in the blue collar field. And I mean, the roads, the electric, the people who build the trucks, the people who build the parts who build the truck. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I mean, it's like a web. Okay. So those things are still viable. And because people are choosing not to do them, they're making supply and demand kind of unbalanced. Yes. And we all learned simple econ 101, where supply is low and demand is high. That's where the money goes. And that's what you're seeing now. I saw on Fox News this morning, they had a guy who said, I'm making 3 times minimum wage and I can't afford to live. Well, 3 times minimum wage is about $22 an hour. That's about $43,000 a year. You can't live on 40. I mean, that's tough. You can't. However, there's 2 answers. Are prices too high on things? Obviously. Okay. But also, if there's 7 million open jobs out there that are averaging $30 to $50 an hour, you might have to out earn inflation if you want to survive on your own. I mean, that's just the fact of life.
Yeah.
So, if electricians are making 40 and $50 an hour before overtime, why wouldn't you say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to go into where the supply is low and the demand is high again. And I'm going to do what other people aren't willing to do, which is always the best way to not only be to succeed, but to be wealthy doing it.
Yep.
Ditch digging was number 99 out of a list of 100 things that I wanted to do, Wayne. I wanted to be a race car driver. I mean, that was my deal. I wanted to be Richard Petty, baby, driving that blue car around the track. I love that. But in Northern Ohio, that wasn't in the cards for me. Now, It doesn't mean that dream died. I've been successful. I've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful. But I was able to buy a few race cars, and now I do it on the weekends. I mean, so I still got my fix in, right? So dreams never die. They just get displaced sometimes, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, having comfort, peace, and freedom is the goal. Okay. When your grandkids look at how you lived, they're never going to mention your degree. I promise you that. They're going to mention how you lived, what you did to do it, how you ground your life out, how you lived as fully as you possibly could, how you prioritize comfort, peace, and freedom over anything else. That's what they're going to remember about you. And so I just think it's important that people, they got to remember that it's time for us to happen to life, because if not, life's going to happen to you, and you may not like the result of that.
So how did you build a ditch digging business into a company that has 226 people? That was one question. And then the follow-on question is, how do you franchise a ditch digging business? It's an interesting concept.
Well, I'll take the second question first, because I was involved in the patenting of it. It's basically the processes and the systems that you use in order to keep a basement dry. That's basically what we focus on.
Okay.
And there's lots of moving parts to that. There's air cleaning equipment, air handling equipment, air dehumidification equipment. There's backup sump pumps. There's patented ways to drain water away from basements. So that's all one thing. How you build it so big, this is the magic of the U.S. economy, because if you have demand, you outpace yourself. So you need another person, and then you need another person, and then you need another person. And if you can convince the people that are working with you that they should take on an entrepreneurial spirit, I mean, maybe they're not all willing to go out and buy 42 dump trucks like I am, but they still want to feel like they're running their department a little bit. Okay. So there's a gentleman right on the other side of that door that's been with me for 37 years. He was 19 when he started. I was 23. And we convinced each other that the entrepreneurial power of working together was going to be the way we wanted to go. And we just kept replicating that spirit, because it's my belief that, I can't get what I want, nor can my company get what it wants or needs, until every one of you gets what you need first. That is an absolute fact. And anyone that tells you anything different is just lying to themselves. Because, the age of, me pounding my chest like a gorilla, me boss, you employee, those days are gone.
Long gone. Yeah.
And if you can convince people that they can get what they want for themselves with and through your organization, now you're onto something. And that's how this company grew, because people recognize when they come here that they are allowed to be very selfish. And I don't mean selfish in the way at the detriment of others. I mean self-ish, okay? Focusing on them first and the company second. So if they're winning personally, as a group, individually, my company's always going to win. And so that's how it's grown so fast and so big in that amount of time.
How about franchising? How did you franchise this concept?
Well, it was real simple. What do they say? I forget the numbers. I think 60 or 70% of franchises are successful, and only 20 to 30% of startups are successful because of the way the support system. So we recognized that there was a lot of need for what we were doing in the Midwest. We also recognized that if you put the right systems in place, you can get people who aren't necessarily, super construction, experience for 50 years kind of people. You can get them to run a process. I suppose it would be like, how do you franchise a restaurant? Well, you make processes like McDonald's where things can be repeated, and then and other people can do it. So it's kind of similar to that. We have a lot of things that we do that are kind of like required movements, required steps and stages and pieces and parts that make it work. And it's been doing great.
So you built processes and systems that can be replicated and learned by other people and applied in their business. So you've made other people entrepreneurs through the franchise system, which I love. I think it's great. If you have a good franchise, it can be very, very successful.
Yep, for sure.
Tell me about the evolution of your company to an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan.
Well, it's interesting because the whole reason that I wrote the book was because I became kind of an involuntary life coach. And, I don't have any letters after my name. I never went to school. I never had a college degree. I certainly have no training, no professional training at all in coaching. But you're kind of thrown into that when you have a lot of young people around you, and you get to see how they're looking toward the future of their lives, right? Their next car, their next house, their next checking account, their next investment, whatever. So I became like this coach to these folks around here, and I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. It's really my only thing that I do. And so as I could see the success of the book happening, and I could see the success of the coaching happening over the past couple 20 years, I said, well, let's now. It's one thing to climb a mountain and have somebody come behind you, but it's another thing to have them pass you and go over the mountain and learn the peak themselves, because you've been there before and you've done it. So it was my opportunity to say, hey, to whom much is given, much is expected. So I'm now going to give back. So I literally transitioned half the company into an employee stock option plan, stock ownership plan. Mm-hmm. And, it's not something that the people have to buy into. I mean, they just keep going, create great results, and super good things happen to them down the road. So it was my honor to do it, and they're happy as clams that we did it as well. So far, so good.
So that's the true entrepreneur model, because you're making employees who are rank and file employees entrepreneurs and have the ability to participate in the upside of the company as the company grows. So it's a beautiful thing. And it's a very, it's a complicated structure. I've worked with ESOPs over my career, but it's often worth it if the people are motivated to stay with the company and be incentivized. And it's a great incentive structure. So,
sure. When you think of, like, let's assume you buy a share of stock in a large corporation. I mean, you can't really affect change in the share of that, the price of that share, right?
Correct.
You can't walk into GM and as a owner of 50 shares and say, hey, I want to start dictating policy around here. I mean, it's never going to happen. They're going to laugh you out of the board meeting. But when you're working for an ESOP, when you're working for yourself, you can affect change. And I was just having a conversation an hour ago before I started talking to you. 1/4%, 1/8 of a percent, 1/10 of a percent, 0.5%, all these little things that you can do to improve what you're doing adds up to increasing your share price. So it's up to you now to build your own wealth. I mean, your base level is given. It's going to be here, but it's up to you to create the increase in that share price. And, it's kind of a cool thing to watch these people learn and grow and develop into more business-minded people. It's pretty fun.
You mentioned the book Blue Collar Cash. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and I've written a book, and it was an Amazon bestseller, but that's easy to achieve. Wall Street Journal bestseller is a really hard thing to achieve. First of all, what was the origin of you writing this book? When did you write it? And, how's it doing today? And where can people find it?
Well, it was actually the impetus was like a 3-pronged thing. Number one, it was the coaching that led me to think about writing it. Number two, my daughter got sick. She got sick with a pretty life-threatening illness when she was 12. And there was 4 or 5 years that were, her mother and I were scared to death. And, I'm happy to say she's fine now. I write about her in the book, actually. When you have that much time sitting around in waiting rooms and oncology offices and radiology rooms and all that kind of thing, you really have a lot of time to think. And I said to myself, what would I tell her? She's going to come through this. And when she does, what would I tell her about how she should be living? And the words comfort, peace, and freedom just could not leave my brain. I kept seeing them everywhere. It was like once you see a yellow Volkswagen, you see yellow Volkswagens everywhere. And this was the same thing. So I started writing a letter to her about what she should be chasing, which is her perfect nirvana is whatever her vision or version of comfort, peace, and freedom is for herself. Yes. And they're different for every one of us. That's the beauty of life. So I started writing her a letter in that fashion. Then I started putting my coaching into that. And then I started talking about all my buddies who had overcome unbelievable tragedy in their lifetimes to be successful blue collar entrepreneurs. And when you read the book, you'll understand there's a few in there that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. And yet they came through those things. And it kind of all culminated into this writing. I ended up with like 12 legal pads full of ink and a very sore wrist. So I bundled it all up and literally found an editor in New York. I Googled editors in New York and found a guy who had a whole stable full of great writers and ghostwriters and editors. And they loved what I did and they cleaned it up and reorganized it a little bit. They didn't change it at all, which is really cool.
Good.
And then came an agent and then came HarperCollins and a bidding war. And it was unbelievable. I was a whirlwind. And it became a bestseller about a year ago. I think the book's 3 years old.
That's a great achievement. I mean, as a writer and part-time writer, my daughter's an author also. She just wrote her second book and released it. She's doing self-publishing, and it's just hard to get noticed. And obviously, your book was definitely noticeable, and it got a lot of attention as a result. Tell me what brings you joy and fulfillment.
Joy and fulfillment. Well, my granddaughter, my family, there's nothing better than my family. My daughter just had her first baby, who's 5 years old. Mine too.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I hate to say that I'm a grandpa. I'm going to call myself Pops, but I love music. I mean, beside my family, I love music. I love being on the golf course, and I love being on my boat. And those are the things that I just. And it's not the things; it's the atmosphere, it's the weather, it's the peace, it's the freedom, it's the comfort of where I am. It's all those things. So you put me on any one of those triangles, and I'm a happy guy.
How do you help people create wealth today? What is your magic formula?
Well, you'll read that in the book as well. The biggest thing for me is people have no idea how to use the visionary side of their brain. And it's so important because it doesn't require any training. It's basically free. But taking your thoughts and your hopes and wishes and dreams and putting them down on paper is the only way to legitimize those paths to actually happening. So you can hope and wish and dream all you want, but someday never comes. I mean, I write a whole chapter about the word someday. And 2 days is a much better word to use than someday, right? So, Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all those kinds of people, what they have in common is they have a huge ability to give credence to the visual side of their brain. They're going to allow that to work for them. And all I'm thinking is, if we're all so good at planning a vacation, which we do down to the suntan lotion, right? Why aren't we good at planning that for everything else and having those visions, even if they're long-term, 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now?
Sure.
So my whole rule is draw the brochure that is your life. And I'm talking about your kind of pet, your kind of sport, your kind of hobby, your kind of house, your kind of car, your kind of vacation, your kind of charity moment, whatever. Draw that all out with a box of crayons if you have to on a poster board. Put that on the wall, because what most people don't realize is that when you look forward to something, you're actually reliving that in your brain over and over and over on a constant basis. And the more you see something, that's why they call it looking forward. The more you see something in your brain, I learned this from the Robbins family, from Tony Robbins and his son, Jared. the more you see something, the more these little reticular activating systems, the more these little electrodes in your brain start to fire faster and faster and faster, to the point where your brain now convinces itself that it actually owns that thing already.
Right.
And then what it does is it kicks your body into an almost involuntary mode to go find that thing. Why wouldn't you allow the most powerful computer on earth to work that for you and just drag you towards your best lived life, your best version of life, which is on that wall that you've drawn for yourself that no one else can do but you? Why wouldn't you allow that power to work for you? Because it takes so much of your own effort away when you are drawn to something like that.
Yes.
So that's the thing that I do. In fact, we do it here every day. I mean, there's people here chasing stuff every single day.
But that's the beauty. Well, first of all, I've been following Tony Robbins for 30 years. I mean, since he started doing this stuff, and I'm a huge fan of his. And that got me thinking like that too. It's envisioning your best life, doing what you're passionate about, doing what you love doing. So, I'm a lawyer. Do I love lawyering? Not really. I like helping people. And this is the way in which I help people. And you're a coach. You're not just a business guy who's developed a very great business with processes and patents to do what you do, but you have created a situation where you're always coaching and helping people get to their next level, which gives you apparently gives you great satisfaction. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. So looking forward, but also living in the present constantly.
The greatest part about it is, so I'm sure you've been to a black tie event where it's an auction, a silent auction, right?
I've run them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I have nothing against silent auctions. However, if you're going to that auction to bid $3,000 on a $6,000 or $7,000 vacation, and that's your purpose, is to give the $3,000, but you're getting something in return, I think there's something a little, I mean, they work, don't get me wrong, but there's something a little shallow there to me. So I've always felt that the more you give, the more without expectation, the better off it is for you. Yeah. But there is a little secret there. And I think, karma is out there. You call it whatever you want. But it seems to me that, we're involved in a lot of charities here of our time, talent, and our treasure, not just the treasure, but time and talent.
Yes.
The more we give, the more we just seem to be blessed to give more. So I'm not saying that's why you should do it, because you should never expect something for nothing. But if you do give and you give back and you give of your knowledge and your talent, your skills, your time and everything, you just seem to be blessed with the ability to do that more. And I can't explain it, but it works. And it's one of the most satisfying things I've ever done is all the charity work I've done in my life. It's so much fun. It doesn't require a lot of effort. It doesn't require a lot of money. But the results are just ridiculous. It's just so cool.
My sons and I used to drive a truck for one of the local charities and pick up food on the weekends for them and put it in the food distribution center. I ended up being on the board of this charity. It was a pretty big local charity for many years, but I got the most benefit I got out of working with that charity was driving the truck and going out and picking up the stuff and bringing it back and helping people. There was more satisfaction out of that than serving on the board and figuring out how we were going to raise money and spend money. There's an important function in that. Obviously, you've got to have people out there doing that. But for me, just doing that, I felt like I was giving something back constantly, and I really resonate with that.
So, you see a lot of people that say, well, you know what, that charity, it's expensive. I don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. So here's one. Go to run a McDonald's house with $70 and 6 people. So 70 divided by 6, $8.50 a piece, whatever, right?
Whatever. Yeah.
You walk in there with $70 worth of groceries, and they have these beautiful kitchens. Most people don't know they have wonderful kitchens, commercial kitchens in these places. And you sit there and you make spaghetti and meatballs and salad and garlic bread. And you spend 2 hours with 6 of your friends or 6 of your coworkers. and you create this meal, you wrap it all up, you put it in the refrigerator, and you walk away. You don't look for the accolades. You're not waiting for someone to come down and eat it and go, wow, you're such a great person. Thank you for doing this. Because those people have kids that are suffering across the street in a hospital right now with cancer and all these other kinds of things. Yeah. And all they want to do is come home and be quiet and have a home cooked meal, right? Yeah. And that's what Ronald McDonald House does. And that's just one example of how $70 and 2 hours of your time will make you feel like $1 million. And we do it 2-3 times a year, and we love it. And every time we put the sign up sheet on, it's filled out in like an hour. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a lot, but it's such a cool thing. And if more people did this around this world, I mean, we'd have so much less issues with what's going on. But, I think we need to spend a lot more time marketing how easy and how fun and how productive and how rewarding these types of things are.
Well, how good it makes you feel. So sure. Selfishly, giving something back in terms of your time, a little bit of money makes you feel good. And so sure. Don't you want to feel good? So this is a way to do it. I agree with you 100%. Last question for you today. How do you define success?
So for me, I define success as comfort, peace, and freedom. Those are the first things. If you can look in the mirror and say, I have comfort, I have peace, and I have freedom. And each one of those words are defined in the book in a way that you might not think about right off the bat. Because we're not all going to go out and draw on our board, being a rap star or an influencer or owning, a mega yacht in a McMansion and 15 cars. We're not all going to go after that. Okay. Each one of us has our own unique nirvana that's truly our own. Man, if I could live like that, that would be really cool. So if you're on your path to getting to that picture that you drew and hung on the wall, which, by the way, Wayne, only 1% of the population is willing to do that. And yet it's so easy. Oh, yeah. Study by Virginia Tech. You have to look it up. Sure. Only 1% of the people are willing to go that far. But I would tell you, if you're on your way towards that nirvana, towards that picture, which can change as you get towards it, sure, that's truly success, where you feel like, the picture I have in my mind that I put down on paper, my nirvana, the thing that's what I'm chasing. That's what I'm going after. And I'm realizing it. I'm in control of that because 99% of the people can't say that. So that's truly success for me.
Well, let's get more people thinking like that. And
100%.
Everyone should be reading Ken's book, Blue Collar Cash. It's available on Amazon. It's available on his website. What's your website?
It's simple. It's kenrusk.com.
Everybody visit the website, learn more about Ken, because he has a lot to offer to all of us. And the fact that Tony Robbins wrote an endorsement on his book is, that's a huge success right there. So I define you as the definition of success. Thank you for being a special guest on Blueprint for Wealth today.
Thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate it.
And join us next time for another extraordinarily special guest like Ken on Blueprint for Wealth. Otherwise, have a great week.